All right, so I wanted to talk about a couple of things. Since Calhoun retired recently, I wanted to, talk about some memories you might have of him and do some sort of nice thing like that. And I also wanted to talk about you personally, your journey. So you played in Pittsburgh, right?
Grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Had a chance to play at Peabody High School there. Peabody High School is now Obama High School in Pittsburgh, but it's a historic high school. Many of the people who came out of Pittsburgh early on were people that were big in dance and on Broadway or in Hollywood, Gene Kelly, those kind of people dancing in the rain, and you had the Scarecrow and the Wizard of Oz and all that. And along that line, growing up, not only were you athletic, you had a chance to be in the arts as well. So we were an academic high school, an arts high school, and athletic all combined in one.
Yeah, what made you decide to play your college ball in Boston?
Well, what happened was I went to the University of Pittsburgh Upward Bound program. And at the University of Pittsburgh Upward Bound program, we would have, one of my friends was at Carnegie Mellon University, a guy named John Clark. John Clark was actually the first person to come from Pittsburgh to Northeastern in my generation of people. A guy named Dr. Richard Mullins was the director of the Carnegie Mellon Upward Bound program. And he was a Northeastern athlete. He played with Mike Jarvis and those guys there at the university. He grew up with those guys, and he was telling us about Northeastern University in Boston. In fact, when he was telling me about it, I thought he was talking about Northwestern in Chicago. And so did my family, to be honest with you. And then we thought it was Northeastern Illinois because they were the Huskies, and these guys were the Huskies as well. So Dr. Mullins was such a wonderful role model. Even though he was at Carnegie Mellon, we spent time, they're in proximity to each other in Pittsburgh. Oakland is where the section of Pittsburgh they're in, so we would always go and see Dr. Mullins. So when I was being recruited very heavily because my best friend, who was a junior, was first-team high school All-American and went on subsequently, right out of his first year in college, to have like a 10-year or 12-year NBA career, a guy named Mel Bennett. So Mel was being recruited, but they were trying to recruit me to get Mel. So as I talked to Dr. Mullen about that, which is hard for a young guy to talk about, I was like, I really don't want to go to a place where they're recruiting me so Melvin can come. And so he told me about Northeastern was starting a Division I basketball program. There was a young coach named Jim Calhoun there that he wanted me to, and his assistant was a guy named Mike Jarvis. And Mike Jarvis is going on to also be a heck of a Division I basketball coach. But Coach Jarvis and Coach Calhoun used to come and recruit me. I was their first Division I recruit. And they would come to my house, and I knew once they bought, my mother was sold on them. And once they were sold, she was sold on their passion, and also because they told me the truth. Now, they still tried to recruit Melvin. Well, my friendship almost made him come because I was there, but I was like, he ended up going to the University of Pittsburgh, which most of those guys never did. Maurice Lucas went to Marquette. Ricky Coleman went somewhere. All those guys that went on to the pros. White Clay went to Notre Dame. Those guys left Pittsburgh. And so at the time, because Billy Knight stayed home. So Billy was sort of a role model of mine. And when I talked to Billy, in fact, I wore his number. The 35 that's retired at Northeastern that Reggie wore as a tribute to me because I was his coach and I had recruited him along with Carl Fogle and others, was really because of Billy Knight, who played at the University of Pittsburgh. I wore that number because of him and the relationship he had with me when I was a high schooler and he was in college, and I would go see them play. And the first guy to try to recruit me was a guy named Tim Gergerich, and Tim Gergerich went on to be coaching the pros, but also coached at Nevada, Las Vegas with Jerry Tarkanian, and ended up being in Seattle on the pros and all coaches and still coaching to this day. So Coach Calhoun was a young person who really cared about his players because he still was young enough to play with us. And so first introduction to Coach was a bow to my chest. He was checking my heart, you know. And unfortunately, when you're from Pittsburgh and someone bows you, you bow him back. And I was like, oops, I bowed this guy and he's my coach, but he's out there playing. And he was not so happy with the bow, but he was happy that I gave him the bow because it showed him that I wasn't going to back down from anybody. If I didn't back down from him, I wasn't going to back down once I went out on the court. And so I knew that we were pioneers for the program, and we were pioneers for Coach's career. What's wonderful about him is he listened to you. As a player, I could go in his office and talk to him. That's why we became such good friends. That's why he has taken me into the Hall of Fame in his shrine with him. This is why, you know, when he sees me in front of his children, he cries. And my children, he cries, and I tell him why you crying. And he said, because that's the first guy to say yes to me. And he's been in my life ever since. But more importantly, he's more proud of what his guys have accomplished than we are. He has guys that not only have become professionals as athletes, but professionals in life and been very successful. We've graduated. One of the key things there, I mean, I can tell this story to you guys now, but my freshman year at Northeastern, I had great grades, but I didn't have great credits. I had 2 incomplete. And I was at a steel mill working, making more money than I ever made in my life. He called my mother to tell her that I wasn't going to graduate on time if I didn't come and fix these incompletes. So she didn't understand that whole thing about if you can have great grades. And she only asked me what my grades were. So I told her that, you know, I had great grades. You know, I had a 3-point-something grade point average. I explained to her what that was. Then she said, you know, great. And that was that. Never known, because I could make the incompletes up when I get back to Boston. Before school started, I'll just turn in some papers or whatever, right? They made me quit my job, take the bus back to Boston. I was so mad at Calhoun. It was almost, the anger was so extreme that it was frightening for me. I was that mad because I was making more money than I ever made in my life. At the steel mill, back then I was making $13 an hour in 1974.
It's a lot of money.
Lots of money
at that time.
And I was a chemist because you were a college guy. They just do a co-op in order to be eligible to play or go to graduate school, you know. And it was because of Coach and those folks being on my case about school. And he put the dean on. He had the dean call my mother as well. And that kind of thing. So, as I watched him, I went on to not only be a player with Coach, but to coach with him. And that was an honor. I was probably the only part-time associate head coach in the country that had that kind of title with a coach. But he was clear that I wanted to be a college president and that I did not want to be a basketball coach. But he kept me in basketball because he knew that it would allow me, first of all, the contribution I could make athletically to it, but also, and intellectually to the game, but also I didn't have to wean basketball away from my life until I was 40. You know, I still had basketball, and I was still a dean. What happened was, it got to a point where things were reporting to me, and it would have looked, even at a private university, strange to have something to work for yourself and have something that you were working in report to you. Because remember, when I started out working, it was I was in admissions over here and basketball over there. But I started growing on this side. Things started coming over here. Now it's reporting to me. And President Freeland, Richard Freeland, who's the commissioner, gave me 2 more years to get to 20 years of coaching. During those 20 years, of coaching and 25 years of being involved with athletics there, we built a program that we're all proud of. In fact, they're honoring us the 13th of October, I believe. It's called Champions Weekend, and they're bringing back people that have won championships. And I probably am the winningest assistant coach in the history of Northeastern sports in terms of the record that we had as a coaching team. And went into the Hall of Fame for both as a pioneer in athletics, but also someone who also helped build the program there.
As a player, how did you contribute athletically during your 4 years playing? Were you more of a...
I was a captain.
Were you captain?
I was captain there, and I was also the... we all played over our positions. For example, I played center because with an afro I was about 7 foot. And then you take it off, I'm like 6'7" and a half. But when you have that big afro, you walk on the court, you're the same height as the big 7-footers that we would play at Syracuse. And, the early teams, like the University of Connecticut, starting out in football. When you move up, and like our football team now, those guys are being overmatched in a lot of ways. Not talent 1 for 1, but talent 1 for 10. From 1 to 15, they're excellent players who are all just tremendously talented people. And so I was able to play with some great guys here at the university. One, John Clark, who I came up with, was drafted by the Celtics. I ended up playing after I finished in the Continental League and those kinds of things. But that's when the Continental League was something that traveled all over the world and played, That's why they called it that. But I was able to be a dominant big person for them and play, grab all the rebounds I could and play with some great guys. They ain't basketball, but I played with them. I started all my 4 years there and played a lot of games, and
You were listed. I kind of checked the Northeastern Hall of Fame website. You were listed at 6'8", 230 when you played.
Yeah, but you shrank.
Well, yes, but was that at the time? Was that a big center or was that an average?
That was a huge power forward.
Huge power forward. Okay.
But I was stronger than most of those guys. I could bench press, 300-400 pounds.
And that comes from the steel mill?
It comes from being from Pittsburgh. You're just country strong. I mean, you're guys, we walked all the time, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they would see my calves, and, even today, I jump higher than most people. Because you just have, you always were walking.
Do you think if I put you on a gym floor right now, basketball in your hand, you could dunk?
The last time I dunked was 40-something. And I'm 50-something now.
All right.
And I even attempted. If you gave me, I bet you if you gave me 3 weeks, I could dunk. Not running, I could dunk standing and going up.
I might have to call you out on that.
Yeah.
Was dunking even allowed?
Yes.
Back when so when did they outlaw the dunk?
Well, I came in when freshmen were allowed to play.
Okay.
Remember they weren't allowed to play?
Yeah.
I was among that group, so when I came in, all the seniors were mad.
Oh, so you were...
Except for the seniors in my life that changed my life. Sam Jordan, who taught me ethics and values, and that I was this arrogant kid from Pittsburgh who was coming in to take their jobs. And he taught me what it was like to be mature, and accept me. And John Booten, who now is the person who distributes for Massachusetts for the tournament. He picks the people and all that, and where they go. He sees the tournament here. He was a great teacher and coach and all that after that, but he was a senior. Those guys took me under their wing. And even though I was playing in front of them as a freshman, which must have been hard because remember they were playing under the sophomore rule, that and my friend came, John Clark, when he was a year ahead of me. He came the first year freshman could play, and he started as a freshman. And I came in, but he wasn't recruited by Jim Calhoun. Jim Calhoun happened to show up here as coach because the other coach was no longer coaching. and they recruited Jim late. You know.
What's one piece of advice that Coach Calhoun gave you that you've, kind of put into the university that you've sort of, curtailed into your everyday work?
That you're never bigger than the thing that you care about the most. You're never bigger than that. You don't allow yourself to become it. Don't think of yourself in a way that makes you feel as if the world has to revolve around you, that people matter. He didn't care. He got letters that if you read them, you should have heard what they would say about us on the grill. He was probably one of the first coaches in this city to start 5 African American players. And the hate mail he got for that. The hate mail he got when we would be on the road. The things they would say to us on the road. The things some of our teammates would say in the locker room when we first came. And he had to deal with that. Because they weren't used to having, 6 black guys on a team of 15. It's always 1 or 2. All of them ended up going to the NBA or something, but it was always that 1 or 2. But,
yeah.
Coach Calhoun changed the whole culture.
Change the culture around Boston, or do you think nationally?
Both. This is why it's so ironic that not only were his kids graduating, we were all going on to be successful in different parts of our life, because he sort of gives you a desire and a drive, and you don't want to disappoint anyone. He starts with your parents. Then he pulls into, I don't call him Jim Calhoun. I've never called him Jim to his face.
What do you call him, Coach?
Yes. I mean, it's just, it's a respect thing. He calls me Mott.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I know who's on the phone, Mott.
He's the only person.
Well, my friends,
yeah.
My teammates call me Mott, because he calls me Mott.
Mm-hmm.
Mott, get the rebound, Mott. Mott, come here, Mott. Mott, lead them in the exercises,
Mm-hmm.
My other memory of him is, he used to believe I got haircuts. What we used to do would be, we would come to practice and we would go in the shower and steam your hair down. You come up, because back then they were sticklers for that. You had to have your hair cut and all that. We came in with froze and stuff, and they were like, we got kicked out of practice in the beginning because he just didn't understand. Then we sat down with him and we explained to him why it was important for me to have an afro and, hair and all that. And you know what he said? Okay. I understand.
Do you think a lot of coaches wouldn't have said that?
Not then. Because, Bobby Knight and those guys, you wouldn't have played for them. Mm-hmm. Because they came out of the military. They were very, all the guys looked the same. Everybody had the same haircut. Black, white, you all had your little part on the side, comb your hair to the side, and you had the high and tight around the ears, and you all looked the same.
I have 2 other questions. So, how long did you play in the Continental League for?
It was 2 years. I played with a guy named Carlton Smith and a guy named James Garvin, and a guy named and Bobby Cooper out of Providence. Cecil Rutherford and all those guys we used to read about, everyone was in that league, because it was it was a true league back then, and we would play, and then I was like, I'm out of here. What happened was, one day we just decided, even though we were making all this money every week, he made $500 a game. Cash.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah, so you play 4 games a weekend. It's a couple $1,000 a weekend. Now you got to do your taxes, because they weren't taxing it and all that. You have to be responsible. And a lot of guys weren't. And we would go to Alaska. I was in Alaska when pizzas were like $14 back in the day, and that was a lot of money. You could buy it on Huntington Avenue for $2. Hawaiian Punch was like $6 a can. It's not even $6 now.
Nowhere near that.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So we were like, bag of chips was like $10.
And also, just when I put the story in the paper, I'd love to have some like really cool old photos of you playing. Do you have any?
Yeah, I have some at home.
Do you think I could have some?
Yeah, you just got to dig them up.
Thank you.
My mom will. I mean, my sisters will email them to you. Maybe I'd click on and tell them.
I'd really appreciate it.
Because they're around. Yeah, but bottom line is that, Coach is just a wonderful human being. He's one of those guys that I'm just so proud I've had in my life. I learned so much from him. More importantly, I learned to just respect life, and people, and to never take sport for granted. It's a gift. It's something that you're honored to play it, but at some point, it has to shape something in you, and you have to use it, not allow it to use you. It uses you when you don't be productive in the things that you're supposed to be in your life. I mean, his book, Passion to Lead, talks about a lot of that stuff.
Do you ever have him on campus?
Yeah, he received from us the Chancellor's Medal.
That was last
year. He spoke at my, he was a speaker at my inauguration, and faculty members, some of them, wanted to know why I was having a basketball coach speak until he spoke, because he could talk about my life. The only thing I didn't like, he told my mother about, my mother until inauguration from 1976 probably did not know that when he had come down to see us play in the summer league, the reason we couldn't play was we had got kicked out the league for fighting. And we were in another neighborhood playing in their league, and those guys tried to beat us, but they didn't. They tried to beat us up, but that didn't happen. We reversed that on them, and we got kicked out of their league. So when he came and he told my mom, he came by to see her and said, well, I'm going to go see them play. And he goes up there and he finds out we're not playing, but he never told her until at the inauguration. He says, I want you to know that the time I came down to Pittsburgh, right in the middle of the speech, Keith, those guys got kicked. The time he got kicked, he was telling stories about what he liked about me. Is one time they were being very mean-spirited to him during the middle of a game, and they had signs up, and his children were crying. And I went up to the stands and I pulled down the sign. Right. During the middle of the game. I pulled down the signs and said, you're not going to do that to his kids. Because they were mad because he benched some of the black players. And he had benched us for probably something that was elementary at the time. They would never do as a mature coach, but as a young coach growing up in the sport, it was something silly, hair or, something. Or you sprinted backwards, or you turned around, or you wore your shoes wrong, or you didn't, you didn't wear a tie today. Well, some of us only had one or two ties, and after a while, you wear the same stuff, people start talking about you when you do that, so.
Like you just went right up there to defend him, though, and take the sign.
Just thought it was wrong.
Yeah.
You got to do what you believe in.
Yeah. This is, thank you so much. I just sit here and listen to you talk for 2 hours. I know that you're a really busy guy, but I love all these stories. That's why I'm a history major. I just love hearing stuff like that.
There's not enough storytelling, and stories that matter. That's why when I sit there, I listen to a lot of people talk about them, like I'll be in the sports bar or something, or I'm eating, and I was in the gym when he retired. I left a meeting and I went over to where the athletes work out, and I turned it on, and I stood beside the machine. It didn't work out. I was just listening, and I listened to people talk about him, and because you know him, you sort of, and how he's revered now, in that sport, and the 3 national championships and all that kind of stuff. And I remember when he couldn't dress, and when his duster was, it was uncoordinated clothes, checks and stripes, and this and that and the other, and You know, he was driving around in the dust so the doors wouldn't open. To now having centers named for his parents that he's built for health, for cardiac and this and that and the other. And to being so popular in Connecticut he could be governor. And to being in the same storyline as the greatest who ever coached the game. Not a person at Northeastern that could say, when they saw that young man walk in the door, that they thought that was going to be the case. They thought he was just, you know, someone who had a lot of pipe dreams to sell. And when we told those young people that they could win, then he taught them how. End of story. And I was part of that journey, you know, from pioneer as an athlete to leader as a coach, you know. So that's where we are. So I'm really proud, man. I'm very